I set the green bean casserole down on the kitchen counter, still warm from my oven 3 blocks away, and untied my apron. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold November air I'd just walked through. They were shaking because I'd finally heard it, the thing I'd been pretending not to notice for the last 2 years. "Why don't you eat in the kitchen, Mom? Jessica and I need the dining room for our actual guests." My son David had said it so casually, like he was asking me to pass the salt, like I wasn't his mother, like I hadn't spent the last 6 weeks preparing for this Thanksgiving dinner in his new house, the house I'd helped with the down payment, though we don't talk about that anymore. I picked up my purse from the hook by their front door. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out, leaving behind the casserole I'd made with my mother's recipe, the pumpkin pies cooling on their granite countertop, and 23 years of convincing myself that my son's coldness was just his way of being independent. The walk home was longer than 3 blocks. It felt like miles. I'm Margaret, though most people call me Maggie. I'm 67 years old, and until that Thanksgiving evening, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I was a retired librarian, a widow of 4 years, a mother of 2, David, 39, and my daughter Claire, 36, a grandmother of 3, a woman who'd spent her whole life taking care of everyone else, believing that's what love looked like. That's what I thought anyway. It started small, the way these things always do, little comments that felt like paper cuts. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, started calling me Margaret instead of Mom about 6 months after their wedding. When I asked David about it, he shrugged and said, "She has her own mother, you know." Fair enough, I thought then. Not everyone wants to call their mother-in-law Mom. I didn't push it. Then came the requests. Could I watch the kids on Saturday? Could I pick up groceries? Could I help with the house cleaning before their dinner party? Each time, I said yes. Because that's what grandmothers do, isn't it? We help. We show up. We make life easier for our children. I didn't notice when "Can you help?" turned into "You should come over and watch the kids." I didn't notice when they stopped asking and started expecting. I didn't notice when I became less like family and more like staff, but I noticed that Thanksgiving, I'd arrived at 2 in the afternoon, just like Jessica had texted me to do. Not asked, told. Be here at 2. The kids need watching while we prep. No, please. No, if you're free. Just an order. When I got there, the house was chaos. 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Lucas were running through the living room, and Jessica was on her phone, coordinating with the caterer. For the meal I thought I was helping to cook. "Oh, good. You're here," Jessica said, not looking up from her phone. "Can you keep the kids in the playroom? They're driving me insane. And David said you were bringing that green bean thing, so just put it wherever." That green bean thing. My mother's recipe. The dish I'd made every Thanksgiving since David was born. I swallowed the sting and smiled at Emma and Lucas. "Want to play a game with Grandma?" Emma looked at her mother. "Mom said we have to stay in the playroom when the important people get here." "The important people," I repeated. Something cold settled in my chest. "Yeah, Mom's friends from her book club and Dad's boss," Lucas said, already losing interest in me. "We're not allowed in the dining room." Neither am I, apparently, I thought, but didn't say. I spent the next 4 hours in that playroom, reading stories and playing endless rounds of Candyland while I listened to the sounds of laughter from the other room. Every so often, David would poke his head in to grab something, never quite making eye contact with me. "Dinner's almost ready," he'd say. "You okay in here?" Was I? I didn't know anymore. At 6:30, Jessica appeared in the doorway. She was wearing a beautiful burgundy dress, her hair perfectly styled. She looked at me in my comfortable sweater and slacks, and I saw something flicker across her face. Was it embarrassment? "The kids can eat in here," she said. "I'll bring plates." "What about me?" The question came out before I could stop it. Jessica blinked. "Well, you're watching them, right? You can eat with them. We have 8 people in the dining room, and honestly, Margaret, you'll be more comfortable in here anyway. You know how stuffy dinner parties can be. I stood up slowly. My knees popped something that had been happening more lately, reminding me that I wasn't young anymore, that I was expendable. Actually, I said, I think I'll head home. But you haven't eaten, Jessica said, and I almost laughed at the concern in her voice. Almost. I'm not very hungry. That's when David appeared behind his wife. Mom, don't be dramatic. It's just dinner. Stay in here with the kids, they'd love it. In the kitchen, I corrected him quietly. That's what you said. I should eat in the kitchen because you need the dining room for your actual guests. His face went red. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it, David? He didn't answer. Neither did Jessica. They just stood there, blocking the playroom doorway, and I realized I was done. Done explaining. Done pretending this was normal. Done convincing myself that love was supposed to feel like this. I'm going home, I said again. But the casserole Jessica started. Keep it. Share it with your actual guests. I kissed Emma and Lucas on their heads, grabbed my purse, and walked past my son and his wife. Through their beautiful living room with its professional family photos I wasn't in because Jessica said they wanted just the immediate family. Past their dining room table set for 8, with the good china and crystal I'd given them as a wedding gift. Out the front door, into the November darkness. I didn't cry on the walk home. I was too numb for tears. My house was exactly as I'd left it, a small 3-bedroom ranch I'd lived in for 32 years. After my husband Robert died 4 years ago, everyone expected me to sell it. Too big for one person, they said. Too much maintenance. David had been especially insistent that I downsize, move into a senior apartment, maybe something closer to them so they could keep an eye on me. Now I understood. Closer meant more available, more useful. I'd kept the house out of stubbornness, I suppose. Or maybe some part of me knew I'd need a place that was entirely mine. That night, I sat in my kitchen and ate a turkey sandwich. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock Robert's mother had given us. I looked around at my small, comfortable kitchen, at the herbs growing in pots on the windowsill, at the recipes pinned to the corkboard, at the photo of my kids from 15 years ago, back when David still hugged me. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom, you're being ridiculous. Come back. It's Thanksgiving. I turned my phone off. The next morning, Claire called. My daughter lived in Seattle, about as far from our Indiana town as she could get while staying in the continental U.S. She'd moved there for graduate school and never came back, something I'd never quite forgiven her for. We talked every few weeks, polite conversations about work and weather and nothing that mattered. Mom, are you okay? David texted me. I'm fine, I said automatically. He said you walked out of Thanksgiving dinner. I did. There was a pause. Then Claire said something that surprised me. Good. What? I said good. It's about time you stood up to him. I sat down heavily on my couch. You knew? About how they've been treating me? Claire sighed. Mom, I've been watching it happen for 2 years. Every time I visit, I see it. The way Jessica talks to you, like you're the help. The way David just lets it happen. I tried to tell you last Christmas, remember? I did remember. Claire had pulled me aside after a particularly uncomfortable dinner and said, Mom, you don't have to take this. I'd brushed her off, told her she was being oversensitive, that David and Jessica were just stressed with work and the kids. I wasn't ready to hear it, I admitted now. Are you ready now? Was I? I looked around my living room at the life I'd built, the space that was mine. Yes, I said. I think I am. Then come to Seattle for Christmas. Please. Stay with me. No obligations. No watching kids. No being treated like you're invisible. Just us. The invitation hung in the air. I thought about spending Christmas in my house, alone, while David's family celebrated without me. I thought about the years I'd spent prioritizing everyone else, shrinking myself smaller and smaller until I nearly disappeared. I'd like that, I said. Seattle in December was nothing like Indiana. It rained constantly, a soft mist that made everything look watercolor soft. Claire's apartment was small but cozy, filled with plants and books and the smell of good coffee. She worked from home as a software developer, something I'd never quite understood but was immensely proud of. "I don't have a guest room," she'd warned me when I arrived. "You'll have to take my bed. I'll sleep on the couch." "Absolutely not," I'd said. "I'll take the couch." We'd compromised with an air mattress in her office, and I'd never slept better. Claire didn't need anything from me. She didn't hand me a list of chores or expect me to cook or clean. She just wanted my company. We walked through Pike Place Market, watched the ferries cross Puget Sound, baked cookies without any pressure for them to be perfect. "I should have visited more," I told her one evening as we sat in her living room, rain pattering against the windows. "I'm sorry I always made excuses." "You were busy taking care of David," she said without bitterness. "You've always taken care of David. He's the oldest. And after his father died, he's a grown man, Mom. He has a wife, kids, a good job. He doesn't need you to revolve your life around him." Claire set down her tea. "Can I tell you something? I moved to Seattle partially to get away from watching it happen. Watching you disappear into his needs. It was killing me." The words hit harder than any of David's casual cruelties. I didn't know I was doing that. I know. That's what made it worse. That night, lying on the air mattress in Claire's office, I thought about the person I used to be, before Robert died. Before I decided that being a good mother meant erasing myself. I'd loved my job at the library. I'd had friends. I'd taken a pottery class and been terrible at it but enjoyed it anyway. When had I stopped doing things just for myself? When had I decided I was only valuable if I was useful? The week before Christmas, David called. I'd been ignoring his messages, but Claire convinced me to answer. "Mom, this is ridiculous," he said immediately. "It's been a month. When are you coming home?" "I am home," I said. "I'm at Claire's." "You know what I mean. Back to Indiana. We need to talk about this." "About what? About how you asked me to eat in the kitchen? Or about how you've spent the last 2 years treating me like I'm your employee?" "That's not I never." He sputtered to a stop. "Jessica feels terrible." "Does she?" "She didn't mean for you to take it that way." "How should I have taken it, David?" Silence. "I've been thinking," I said slowly, "about what a real relationship looks like. With you, I feel like I'm always trying to earn my place, always trying to be useful enough to keep. That's not how it should be." "You're my mother," he said, as if that explained everything. "Exactly. I'm your mother, not your servant, and I'm done pretending there's no difference. So, what, you're just gonna cut me off? Stop seeing your grandkids?" The threat was unmistakable. Emma and Lucas, my tools of manipulation. I'd heard other grandparents talk about this, how their adult children used access to grandchildren as leverage. I never thought David would do it to me. "If you want Emma and Lucas to have a relationship with me," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded, "you can bring them to visit me, in my house, where I'll be treated like family, not staff. Those are my terms." "That's insane." "Those are my terms," I repeated. "I'm done negotiating for basic respect." I hung up before he could respond. Claire, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came and sat beside me. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," I admitted, "and lighter." "Is that possible?" She smiled. "Completely possible." Christmas in Seattle was quiet and perfect. Claire and I made cinnamon rolls from scratch, watched old movies, and talked about things we'd never discussed before: her life, her hopes, the girlfriend she'd been too nervous to tell me about. "I want you to meet her," Claire said, "if you're okay with it." "Of course I'm okay with it," I said. "Claire, I just want you to be happy." "I know, I wasn't sure how you'd react." I thought about all the things I'd been unsure about, all the ways I'd learned to swallow my feelings to keep the peace. "I'm done making the people I love question whether I'll accept them," I said. Sarah came to dinner the next evening, a warm, funny woman who made my daughter laugh in a way I'd never seen before. Watching them together, I realized how much of Claire's life I'd missed by focusing all my attention on David. In January, I flew back to Indiana. My house felt different somehow, emptier but also more mine. I started going through things, really looking at what I'd accumulated over the years. Robert's clothes that I'd kept in the closet, like a shrine. Toys for grandchildren who never visited. Old papers and photographs, and the weight of a life lived for everyone else. I hired an estate sale company and sold most of it. The furniture that didn't fit my life anymore. The china I never used. The baby items I'd been saving for someday. With the money, I renovated my kitchen, updated the bathroom, made the house truly mine. February brought a surprise. A letter from Jessica. A real letter, handwritten, 6 pages long. In it, she apologized. Not a sorry you felt that way apology, but a real one. She talked about the pressure she'd felt, about her own insecurities, about how she'd somehow gotten it in her head that I was judging her parenting. She'd pushed me into a service role because she didn't know how to have a mother-in-law as a person, only as a help. It was honest and painful and probably the most real communication we'd ever had. I wrote back. I told her about the years I'd spent being useful instead of being myself, about how I'd enabled the dynamic as much as she'd created it, about how we both needed to do better. We started having phone calls, awkward at first, but gradually easier. Jessica suggested therapy, family therapy, if I was willing. I was. David was slower to come around. Pride, maybe, or stubbornness inherited from his father. But in March, he called. Emma asked when you're coming back, he said instead of hello. I'm not, I said. This is my home, but she's welcome to visit. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works. You're the parent, you bring the children to family. I'm not a service you schedule when convenient. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know how to do this. Do what? Have a mother who isn't always there. Available. Waiting. It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. You learn, I said. We both do. They came for Easter. David, Jessica, Emma, and Lucas. It was strange at first, having them in my newly renovated space. But I set boundaries. They stayed at a hotel. Meals were at specific times. I didn't cook everything. We ordered pizza one night, and it was fine. At one point, Emma climbed into my lap and said, Grandma, I missed you. I missed you too, sweetheart. Why don't you come to our house anymore? I looked at David, who had the grace to look uncomfortable. Because Grandma has her own life now, I said. But you can always come visit me. Can we make cookies? Absolutely. Later, after the kids were in bed at the hotel, Jessica and David came back to my house. We sat in my living room, the one I'd painted sage green, with the new comfortable couch I'd bought just for myself. This place looks different, David said. I'm different, I replied. I can see that. He hesitated. I talked to my therapist about what happened. At Thanksgiving, I waited. She said I treated you like you weren't a real person, just a role, the mom role. He looked at his hands. I didn't even notice I was doing it. I know, I said. I didn't notice either, for a long time. I'm sorry, he said. And then, like it was hard for him, I'm really, really sorry, Mom. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was a start. That spring, I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I called my lawyer and updated my will. The house, my savings, everything. I divided it equally between Claire and David, but with one condition. David's portion went into a trust that he could only access after completing a year of family therapy. Claire's portion was hers immediately, no strings attached. It's not about punishment, I explained to my lawyer. It's about making sure he does the work, really does it. In May, I flew back to Seattle. Claire had set up the air mattress again, but this time I stayed for 2 weeks. We hiked, explored the San Juan Islands, and met her friends. Sarah's parents invited me to dinner, and I learned what it felt like to be welcomed without conditions. "Mom," Claire said one evening as we watched the sunset over Elliott Bay, "you seem happy." "I am," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I'm really happy." "Good. You deserve to be." It wasn't perfect. David and I still had hard conversations. Jessica and I were still figuring out how to be family instead of just related. Emma and Lucas visited twice more that year, and each time was a little easier, a little more natural. But I was different now. I'd stopped waiting for permission to take up space. I'd stopped shrinking myself to fit into other people's lives. I'd learned that love doesn't mean disappearing real. Love makes room for everyone to be fully themselves. That Thanksgiving, I stayed in my own house. I made a small turkey breast, the green bean casserole, a pumpkin pie. Claire flew in and stayed with me. We ate at my little kitchen table, just the two of us, and it was perfect. David sent a text. "We're sorry you're not here." I wrote back, "I'm sorry you're not here either. You're always welcome." He didn't respond, but that was okay. I wasn't waiting anymore. Around Christmas, I got another call from my lawyer. "Margaret, I wanted to check in about the will. Are you sure about the trust condition?" "I'm sure," I said. "It's not about control. It's about love. Real love means wanting the people you care about to be healthy, even if it's hard." That's a very mature way to look at it. I laughed. I'm 67 years old. If I'm not mature by now, I never will be. But the truth was, I felt younger than I had in years. Lighter. Like I'd been carrying a heavy load and finally set it down. In January, David called. "Mom, I scheduled the first therapy appointment. For all of us, me, Jessica, and the kids." "That's wonderful," I said. "Will you come?" The therapist said it might help to have you there for one session. I thought about it, about whether I was ready, whether I wanted to dive back into the mess we'd made. "Yes," I said. "I'll come." "Thank you," he said quietly. "And Mom, I'm sorry it took me this long to see you. Really see you." "I'm sorry it took me this long to demand to be seen," I replied. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We still had work to do, boundaries to maintain, relationships to rebuild. But for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Not just Mom, not just Grandma, not just the woman who made green bean casserole, just Margaret, Maggie, me. And that was enough.